Hi everyone, welcome to the Quantum Bridge. We have another new guest with us today by the name of Matt. Welcome to the show, Matt.
Hey, buddy, you're right. I think that's the shortest ever intro I've ever had.
I know, that's it.
Thanks for having me.
That's how we roll. But I will
Yeah,
say that I do know Matt from Twitter originally. I can't remember if was it the Brexit days? I don't know. Was it just the COVID thing?
I think it was the beginning of the COVID thing. I hadn't. It was right at the start because I remember you had quite a large account and I was only young. I think I had something like a couple of hundred followers at the time. It was before the first massive purge that Twitter had,
Yeah.
and then we woke up the next day and all of the Twitter had disappeared because obviously that. So
Which
we become friends then and we
yeah,
survived that.
that's right. And then ultimately I did get sort of reacts, but but yes. So I've always known Matt as the Kung Fu Medic on Twitter, and we had that
Yeah.
sort of affinity, I suppose, because of the martial arts as well, which was always nice. Um, but I think Matt, as it's the first time you're on our show, anyway, because you do have your own podcast as well, and we'll link all that information down below for everyone.
Okay.
So, maybe just run through a bit of your past. You know, obviously it was Kung Fu Medic, so we know that there's some sort of paramedic stuff there that I'm familiar with. But how did you get to that point first, and then maybe we'll get on to how that ended. But,
Yeah. Okay. So, right. So I'll do a whistle stop tour, and I do
hmm,
talk quickly. So either listen faster or tell me to slow down. All right. So I don't want to. I don't want to upset everybody. So I joined the army when I was 16. Spent 6 years in the military, the Royal Signals. I served in Kosovo for 6 months. That was my only tour, and then I finished up at 16 Air Assault Brigade in Colchester, and I left when I was 22. I bounced around then for the last sort of 10 years, driving, doing all the sort of usual stuff that ex-squaddies do when you're trying to integrate back into civvy life. And then I fell into the circus. And then I spent about 10 years in the circus where I was doing performing, fire breathing, stilt walking, angle grinding, and all that kind of stuff. You can check out my Facebook and it's got all the pictures there. And then I realized very quickly that a glorified clown weren't going to pay the bills. And I was knocking on my 30s, so I needed to kind of do something a little bit more, I'd say serious perhaps. So I decided out of a window cleaner or paramedic to be a paramedic. So I had to go back to college to do my access to higher education, got into uni, did my degree, and then I worked for West Midlands Ambulance for about 5 years as a paramedic, frontline paramedic. And then I went back to uni to do another top-up degree, which then allowed me to work predominantly more in primary care with doctors and doctors' surgeries out of hours and doing home visits and things. And that's essentially what I spent doing for the last sort of 6 years until this time last year when I left the NHS because of everything that was going on. And from the back of that, obviously having a unique kind of perspective with 1 foot in and 1 foot out. I've never been a conformer. I struggled in the military because we used to ask too many questions. I wasn't just a yes sir, no sir. The circus was great, but then coming into medicine, it was great because you're learning. But then during the pandemic and everything else, things started to happen, and I won't dive into that too deeply in the minute. But yeah, I didn't like what was happening and what I was seeing. And you just saw a completely different side to people that you'd worked with for years. And it was just interesting to see so many people who are in a job where you're supposed to have endless amounts of compassion and empathy, have no compassion and empathy for their colleagues or patients. So it was something that I didn't really want to be part of. So rather than sulking and hulking and doing the usual shenanigans, I just started shouting about it on Twitter. Really, I got banned off Facebook quite quickly and suspended. So I thought that's not the place. So Twitter seemed to be a little bit more open at the time. And then I've just been plugging away, trying to share stuff, raise awareness. And then I bumped into the NHS 100K girls, obviously when it was coming close to the mandates being put in, the vaccine mandates, if people aren't aware of what happened. That was a real thing. We were threatened with dismissal. I did have the meetings with my managers. I did share the emails on Twitter of what I got sent just before Christmas. I did a video with the Together Declaration group who approached me and said, look, we saw your email. Would you do a video? So I was like, hell yeah. And then it kind of blew up a little bit. And then I was doing all sorts of stuff then on the TV and, it was hard though, because there was myself, Kate Goodman, who was a doctor, and Erica, who was a midwife. We all were kind of between us doing rotations on, you know, GB News, This Morning, Talk Radio, and then all the local stuff, and, you know, all that kind of business.
Were they colleagues of yours, Matt?
No, they weren't.
No.
So no, we met. We got so I don't know if you guys have heard the Together Declaration.
We've had
people.
Charlotte on from there.
Oh, that's Charlotte. Okay, yeah, Sal. She's lovely. Yeah, she's lovely. She is. She, I think it might have been Charlotte that reached out to us because she still works in the NHS. I think, off the top of my head. Yeah. And it was her and Anna Rayner that approached me, and Alan as well, and said, "Look, you know, do you want to come and speak out?" And, you know, and they were great with regards to that because they had fingers in all the pies. They could get you in front of people when they were ringing us saying, you know, they want you to do this and want you to do that, and, you know, that's what we did. And then my face was kind of inadvertently out there, whether I liked it or not. And then as the kind of mandate drew closer and closer, I kind of went my separate ways with the NHS 100K, with the Together Declaration people. It just didn't. But they're still great at what they're doing. It just wasn't where I wanted to go with things. And then I kind of bumped into one of the girls from the NHS 100K lot when we were speaking to someone from the Public Health Alliance, PHA, when that was first kind of being incepted. They wanted to speak to us to see whether we could help and things like that. And that we agreed, myself and the NHS 100K girls, we agreed that what they're doing is great, but they were just trying to reinvent what's already here. And I don't think they could kind of grasp the concept of trying to reinvent the ambulance service. And you can't just go walking into people's houses and give them CPR if they're waiting for an ambulance. There's all these things called insurance and consent. And so it was just like, we appreciated what they were doing, but it was just such a big task and it was already done. It was going to cost billions to do. And it was just something that was like, look, you know, this isn't something that we can get behind really, because we're already in the ambulance service. So, you know, but then from that, I ended up meeting Kathy. And then, you know, they were feeling a little bit deflated because we'd just successfully had the mandates overturned and everybody just left, if you know what I mean. So all the donations stopped, everyone left the groups because everyone went back to work and just carried on like nothing had happened. So obviously, if those people don't know the NHS 100K girls, that they were campaigning quite heavily at the beginning and have done since, you know, about the mandates, discrimination, the mask wearing, and they did a lot of stuff in rallying people together, especially from the clinicians and healthcare, to try and get the mandates overturned. Unfortunately, we couldn't stop the carers getting theirs overturned, their mandate through, and a lot of carers lost their jobs. So we mustn't forget the carers. But we managed to. We don't know whether we did it, but we certainly had a big influence. They organised the throwing of the shirts and the scrubs outside Parliament, and the letters of support and statements that were written by everybody. So it was a good kind of campaign. But then as soon as it got overturned, I think it was like 2 days before the deadline, Sajid Javid overturned it. Everyone just left the organisation, if you will, and just went back to their jobs. So all support stopped, all funding stopped. And the girls were feeling a little bit deflated. And that's when I approached them and said, hey, can I use your platform? Because I've got a mouth, I've got lots of things to say and I want to speak to people. But if I was to do that on my own in my house, in my bedroom, well, my spare room, I'm married, I'm with the child, I don't have a bedroom, but it wouldn't have had the same sort of reach. And they said, yeah, that's not a problem. And then we became really good friends and, you know, and it's just kind of morphed from there until recently when I posted a video a couple of weeks ago. And then that's, it's kind of like I've probably fallen out of hilt with some of the doctors after the stuff I said last week or 2 weeks ago.
You put your foot in it, have you? So,
it wasn't so much, but I don't know. Did you see the video?
I did catch it, yeah, before you.
Yeah. So I won't go into it in too much detail, but 99% of the stuff I said on that video was true. Okay, but there's the example of the event that was allegedly paying that money was wrong. So the geographical location and the event that I described was the wrong event, but everything else was true. But I can't try and be a bastion of truth and then leave something up that I've said that's not right. So I deleted it and took it down, and then did a follow-up video. And then I got a bit of kickback from people saying you shouldn't have deleted it. And it's like, well, it was wrong. You know, it was certain, there were certain aspects of it that, but I think what everyone got behind was the rant itself, because I just went off on one. And I don't normally do that. I normally try to be a bit more, but I was really annoyed because I was, you know, we've been doing this 3 years now, lads, haven't we? We've been doing this for 3 years. The podcast has been going for 12 months. I've done 30, nearly 40 episodes. I've interviewed all the people before they were cool. Malhotra, Bridging, Brooke Jackson, the
You've had
Freds.
loads of those guys on there, haven't you? I mean,
Yeah. I've had a decent lineup, and it's been great, and they've all been great. But I've never heard from any of them ever again, if you know what I mean. And that's when I started getting kind of the idea that, are you guys just using me as a bit of a platform? Although I did say use me as a platform, it was with the intention of maintaining a relationship going forward, so that we can, gather our troops and hopefully come together. But no, nothing. And then I had I was just getting a bit frustrated, and then a colleague of mine, a friend of mine, ran me up and gave me some information that really, really annoyed me. And then that's when I did the video. And he spoke to me, said, look, you need to take that down because it's not true. So I was like, right, fine.
It's his fault then, is it? Right. Yeah.
Pardon?
It's your mate's fault.
It's not. I mean, I felt like I betrayed his trust as well, because he told me something, and I was like, look, this needs to be out there, mate. And I was like, no one needs to ever know where it came from. And then there's been no backlash, but the person that I spoke about in the video wrote a Substack about me, not naming me personally, but they actually put in the reply, because once the video went out, that person then messaged me. I was on holiday and said, look, we need to talk because of the video that you put out. It's causing damage. And I said, look, I'm really sorry I've deleted it, but what are you actually doing to help us and benefit us and help us out? And, and she posted that message on the actual Substack. So I was a bit surprised at that, because I think you're going to read that and some people might actually agree with what I've said. But anyway, I didn't want to get into a tit for tat with these people, because this particular person's got, access to worldwide doctors, big following, and I haven't. But you got.
Where are you at with this at the minute then, with your podcast and stuff?
I'm still doing it, but obviously there are a plethora of doctors lining up now after I basically called them all grifters and narcissists, and just said that I'm sort of sick of them going to these events and, noshing each other, backslapping people, and just, yeah, you're doing a great job, and then some of them are going off to Australia, and some of them are doing this, and some of them are suing Matt Hancock. And how does any of that benefit us? It doesn't at all. It just benefits them. So I was sick of giving these people support, not trust, but support, and then becoming a victim of trolls and everything myself, just because of the people I'm speaking to, only to then realize that, yes, they are exposing these things, but in reality, have they exposed anything we didn't already know or were shouting about right at the start? How has it helped us move things forward? And how is it going to change, and how is it going to move things forward? So I think I just started seeing the wood through the trees, and I was like, right, I was prepared to lose my job when the mandates came through. I discussed it with my wife. I was prepared to lose my job. As it happened, I didn't, but I left anyway, because I couldn't look at my manager in the face again after sitting and having a conversation with him, telling me that my decision was wrong when he's not a clinician. And he wasn't seeing the stuff I was seeing, and and it's just like, I can't work here no more. And seeing the patients wondering why they were poorly, and knowing exactly why they were poorly, but I couldn't say anything, because every time I did, I used to get a complaint. So it was just a minefield, really, for work, and I just lost the passion for the NHS, and I felt like I could do more good not being in the NHS and have the constrictions of working in the NHS hanging over my head. So now I'm an apprentice greenkeeper on a local golf course.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, but Matt, we've all had to do what we've had to do in the last, couple of years, and it's not been easy. I mean, hats off to you and anybody who's taken the leap and sort of understood energetically that they can't stay in the same position in some cases, not necessarily because of a certain narrative, but maybe more so because of a certain energetic feeling whereby they just can't resonate with those around them to any degree anymore, and probably better off out. But I like the thing that you said. I watched something, I think it was a recent one, where you were talking about wage slavery. And, we've got there's two sides, I suppose, maybe many more sides to that, but there's certainly two sides to that. There's the one side, which is, do you really need that BMW or that Mercedes or whatever it might be? I like those cars, to be honest, but, can you live without them? And can you therefore live a more principled life and ultimately maybe a happier life? And the other side of it is, are you stuck? Because some people actually are. What are they going to do if they lose their job? So I like the fact that you've tackled that and called that out. we've all had to make our own individual journeys. But I would like to hear again sort of your thoughts on that area.
Well, it's something that kind of, because I used to be exactly the same. I had a lease car, you know, I had, yeah, especially when I was working privately, working for, so people need to understand that a lot of the stuff is already privatized in the NHS, certain things like out of hours services, and other bits and pieces. So I was working for a private provider providing out of hours care at an NHS hospital. So I was on good money at the time. So I was quite frivolous with my finances and I didn't really have to worry anything. And then the lockdown happened and I lost my job because I was a contractor. So the first thing, so I'd gone from earning sort of $5-6 grand a month to nothing. I had a lease car and all that kind of stuff. And it was a real ball ache, out with no help at the time. And it was like, you know, it's just and this was the same for everybody. I think it was, and so then basically I'd gone from being quite all right to really poor. And then I watched my wife rinse all her savings, carrying us through the pandemic that she'd saved, self-employed, excuse me. And I felt horrendously bad. We just had a kid. He was only 2 years old in 19. So there was that to contend with. I got another job. It wasn't a problem, but obviously it wasn't as much money. It wasn't bad. But anyway, it was leaving the NHS. And I went from a 40 grand a year job down to a minimum wage paid job, which was just under 18 grand a year, I think, and an apprentice. And that's when I started to realize, when I started working out my finances, I was like, actually, now that I've got rid of my car, what else do I need to pay for? You know, and the bills are 50-50. But I used to get a lot of messages from people saying, I wish I could leave like you did. I wish I could leave like you did. And I think people need to, like what we've discussed, is you really do need to sit there and think, what do I need and what do I want? Right. Yeah. And unfortunately that
also, what do you think you want? Because it's what have you got used to, isn't it? Often a lot of this, and you did call out something which I think is really sort of prescient in this area, which is also that whole notion that many of us were caught up to some degree, right? Lesser or greater degree, in that whole thing of sort of keeping up with the for want of a better term, keeping up with the neighbours and whatever. Yeah. The minute that actually drops away, it's actually very freeing. So not only are you freeing yourself in terms of work to some degree, where maybe you can be more creative ultimately and forge your own path, but actually all of those trappings falling away is actually a very freeing experience, in my opinion, anyway.
Yeah, no, you're right. I think it's all about controlling your ego. And this all comes down to ego. The ego tells you, I need that car. You know, I don't want it. I need it. You know, I need it. I need that ego boost. I want to drive around anything. And why? If you're married with a kid, why do you need a big flashy car? Who are you showing off to? You know, that's just your ego. You're allowing to project the image that your ego wants. And it's like, you need to control your ego. Your ego doesn't control you. You know, that voice inside your head, it's not you, it's your ego trying to protect you or trying to get you to stay in the bubble that your ego is happy for you to stay in. So once I kind of had everything kind of stripped away from me in that regard and felt really, you know, kind of sorry for myself. And that's when I started realizing what am I going to do? Because the whole awakening process is an emotional thing anyway that everyone has to go through. And while I was doing that, I was still working in a job that I didn't like and I was still seeing what I was seeing. And I had a very supportive wife eventually. It took 12 months, but, you know, now I've got a very supportive wife. But the main thing was, as I sat down and looked at all the outgoings I've got and thought to myself, right, do I need to do this right now? Do I need to have an expensive car? Do I need to go on holiday? I want to, but do I need to do what I need to do? You know, can I control my ego enough to be able to, you know, not have those things rule my life, not try and be as materialistic. And it was a lot easier than I thought. When I got my first pay packet, right, which was 1,500 quid, right, for minimum wage. No, 1,300 it was. I was like, mate, this is like half what I was getting. I didn't have my NHS pension contributions. I was paying less tax. I wasn't paying my student loan. So straight off the bat, from earning less money, I was about 900 quid a month better off anyway, simply because I was earning less. So when you have less, you get used to having less. So then you think, well, why do I need to buy £110 pair of Nike Air Max? Why do I need to, when I've got 4 in the box already? Or, you know, this, that, and the other. So it was, you've got to want to do it, paraphrasing, I think. And that's the difference. And I wanted to make sure my son had a good future. And if that means I don't buy a fancy pants car or go on holiday, then that's what I'll do 10 times over.
Yeah, Matt, the other thing, just to mention that this may have some resonance for you in the martial arts world. Gary and I have come in and out in different guises, whether it be sort of me with Tai Chi and Southern Mantis and a lot of those other areas that I've been interested in, and him, Gary, whatever he says, having been absolutely interested in it all his life and having some involvement. We've had people like Jeff Thompson on. Okay, I don't know if you're aware of Jeff Thompson, but he did a book like Watch My Back. He was a doorman, but he's a very high-ranking martial artist, mainly in Japanese martial arts. And the whole thing of Budo, which of course there are equivalents, of course, in the Chinese martial arts and whatever, is this stripping away, which is very much Bruce Lee stuff anyway. And getting to the core of things, what really matters. So it's quite nice that actually your journey in terms of work and the monetary aspects and maybe finding out more of what is really at the core of yourself actually will have a translation into that. So I wonder whether or not, one, you've consciously noticed that, because obviously you've done it anyway, if you haven't. And the other aspect of that, of course, is has that actually translated into your martial journey as well?
I think it has, and the military helped with that as well. So
right,
I consider myself quite lucky because I've had quite a lot of jobs where you're required to be, where you're required to be a drone and not think. But I was still able to think. So I've always had this niggling thing where I've just felt like I've not fitted in. And I know it's a cliche, everyone says that. I didn't realize that was a thing until 2-3 years ago. So I was completely asleep until then. It was only this COVID stuff that came out that started waking me up to it. So I didn't ask questions when I went to war and all this kind of stuff, and I wish I did. But now with the discipline of martial arts, I realized that you haven't got to make it perfect. You just got to make sure it works, and that your technique and delivery is half decent. You don't need to make sure everything is inch perfect. As long as it works and you're comfortable with these things, you start to realize very quickly that you don't really want. I feel like the richest man in the world. I've got a beautiful wife that supports me. I've got a beautiful son, I've just had to completely change. I used to be so materialistic. I literally used to have boxes of shoes that I wouldn't wear, and all that kind of. I'd go out and just buy stuff. I'd sit there and just spend money, AliExpress, whatever. And then I realized, why am I doing that? Why am I doing that?
Matt, the lovely thing about the relationships as well, which we've all found, is now there's a lot of things in obviously martial arts about pressure test. Of course, in the military, it's absolutely pressure tested, right? Because it is life and death potentially, but and the life and death of others may be around you. But even in just the martial realms, there's this whole thing of pressure testing. Does it work? Does it work at the time of full-blown adrenaline? What about the adrenaline dump? And after that, can you cope with all of that? And I think it's quite a parallel, actually, with what we've seen, is that we've pressure tested our relationships at work, perhaps, friendships, family, whatever. So it's been forged in that sort of furnace of maximum discomfort. And now we're seeing, the ramifications of what life can look like, having been tempered in that way. So again, I just wonder if in a way, a lot of this has been a gift as well as a fairly demonic enterprise, that there is something to be taken from it all.
I 100% agree with you, mate. And I do think, look, I'm not a religious person. I'm getting there. I definitely think this is a spiritual thing. And I know lots of people have said that. But life is struggle, right? And that, I used to get told that years, but now I'm like, well, it is, because it has to be. Because if you don't have struggle, you don't ever have to deal with things. And if you don't have struggle and have to deal with things, you never grow, you never become stronger, you never learn. So most people unconsciously take the path of least resistance because it's easy and there's no struggle and there's no strife. Those people normally that are the strongest or have the confidence or the head strong and all that kind of stuff, they've had struggle at some point in their life, which has forced them to become strong and learn. And that's unfortunately what they've taken away from us with all this Netflix and you can't complain and cancel culture. They've made us all weak and unmilitary, but not in a bad way. But you know what I mean? And that's true, because most people now, they'll see a fight, they'll run the other way. That's fine. I'm not saying you bomb burst straight into the fight, but you can at least go and have a look and make sure there aren't children getting beaten up, but everyone's got into this self-preservation mode where I just want to look after everything that's in my bubble and I don't care about anything else. But now they can burst your bubble and you're not safe. Yeah. So people need to appreciate the fact that they're going to need to experience some struggle. Why should you just be able to walk into the golden age without no struggle at all and everyone else gets shot and struggle in front of you, and then you just step over their corpses. That's not how it works. You know, we've all got to earn our way into this kind of new age that we so desperately want to happen, that some of us are just sitting waiting to happen and not doing anything about it.
Matt, before we run out of time, because it's always that way, just a quick, where are you at now? I mean, you posted a little video earlier that you was waiting for some sort of ruling. Are you technically still a paramedic? Or...
Okay, so because I want to do a podcast on this anyway, because I like to be truthful with people, and I want to go through all the complaints at some point. Maybe we can do it together. But anyway, people need to realise it's a minefield working in the NHS anyway. So I'm part of a registration with body, same as a GMC. HCPC is what I'm under. I have to pay them money to say I'm a professional paramedic and stay on the register. They're hearing today, following some complaints that come in, I think it's 2017, 2018, and they're dealing with them today. If they find me a risk to the public or a danger to the profession, then they'll strike me off or suspend me from practicing. But I still call myself a paramedic. I'm just not allowed to work technically as a paramedic, which I'm not really bothered about anyway, to be honest. Otherwise, I will be a greenkeeper. But I'm sharing this stuff with people because I want people to realise, even when you've left, it's still there hanging over your head. And this stuff has been going on for years. So when people go, oh, I'm just going to put in a complaint about him, you need to realise what it does to people. But as to regards where I'm going now, I don't know, if I'm honest with you. This is why I wanted to do this interview with you guys, because the NHS 100K podcast is still going. But I'm going to try and start going down the route of having some normal guests and like yourselves, trying to come up with solutions, some more just real people. I'm not saying doctors aren't real, but you know, it's a lot of the doctors were on there just to kind of like explain things. I want people to, we've got to come up with ideas how we're going to get out of this mess. So I don't know. Hence why I'm doing these little videos on Twitter. I felt like I've forged this path with the podcast. And now I don't know what I'm doing. I'm not going to lie to you. You know what I mean?
Well, actually, that's quite nice, because what you've managed to do from that is you've opened all of these relationships. You've sort of sent those ripples out into the multiverse, universe, whatever you want to call it, and they will come back, and it will be more for you to choose what you accept and sort of run with, than for you to necessarily have to say now or in the next few weeks what the next 5 years holds for you. I don't think we're in that paradigm anymore, Matt. I think that's a nice place actually for this to end on, that sort of note that, you know, we've got many different pathways that are sort of opening up to all of us. And it's because we've taken some action. And I don't want to overplay that. We haven't taken any massive action. Gary and I have set up this channel and been fortunate enough to be somehow energetically underpinned and had wonderful people like yourself coming on and bringing their stories. But I think it is that network and that energetic network that's just being put in place that will blossom, and that will, the fruits of that will be seen, but they just may not be exactly like we expect them to be. And that's all right. So, yeah.
I think people need to realise that fear controls a lot of stuff. And when you make decisions based on fear, not reason, they're very, very different things. Now the fear's ebbing away now because they've, you know, people are now realising, crikey, what's just happened? Because they're able to come out and see what's happened. And fear makes you do some ridiculous things, but I'm conscious of time here, so I won't rub it on. But yeah, I think everyone just needs to make sure that just have faith in whatever it is. God sitting on a cloud, the earth, the universe, whatever. Just have faith.
Right. I think it's a very nice way to end it. Thank you very much, Matt. Gary, you can wind it all up. But from my perspective, Matt, thank you very much for joining us, mate. I really enjoyed it.
We'll watch this space and we'll put all your details below for the audience. Yeah. Hope to see you again, mate. Brilliant.
Yes, thanks, guys. Thank you very much.
Cheers, Matt. Take it easy. Bye, mate.